Welcome to Insights in Touch, the podcast where industry insight meets meaningful conversation. Hosted by Kristin Thorne, this series, presented by iFraud Foundation, explores the real issues facing the property and casualty insurance world. It's the pulse of an industry under pressure and the voices working to protect its future. Stay informed, stay connected, stay in touch. Now, here's your host, Kristin Thorne.
Okay. I now like to introduce Dr. Michael Skiba, also known as Dr. Fraud. So thank you so much for being here with us to discuss everything fraud.
Absolutely, Kristin. Great to be here. And yeah, this is right up my alley. So yeah, I'm excited to chat with you about this. So absolutely.
All right. Let's first talk about, so we in New York City, we have these staged construction accidents going on that have been going on for the past few years. Because this is, you look at this stuff high level as well. Why should people care?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, Kristin, this is what's so important, because I think it's so easy to think of it's so out of our scope, right? That we're not paying, it's not hitting our pocketbooks. It's the big corporations, the big insurance companies, banks, construction companies that are feeling it. That's not the case. I've done so many research studies, just finished a big one about 3 years ago looking at insurance fraud just in the United States, and the numbers were astronomical. I came up with over 300 billion. I think that's low. I think it's probably triple that. And that's just, specific to insurance fraud. And the thing is, it trickles down, right? Because what happens is we end up paying more in our pockets. I've seen statistics, I've been involved in some showing, we pay an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a year. I still think that's low because it's so hard to quantify this, Kristin, right? I mean, how do you put a number on the fact that, the premiums for your grocery store went up because they have to pay more premiums, and then they have to pass the cost along to us. So we're paying, another dollar for a banana or another 50 cents for gas or something like this. It trickles down in so many different areas that people don't even realize it, but it hits us hardcore, specific to construction, right? So anyone that engages in any type of, it doesn't even have to be large buildings, but even landscapers working in your driveway, their costs go up because they pay premiums for their workers. So it just trickles all around. It's just there's so many overlapping circles that we all, there's no doubt we all pay a lot extra every year.
So you look at tons of fraud all over the world. What do you make of these staged construction accidents? Have you seen something like it before? Is it similar to things you've looked at? Tell me about it.
Absolutely. So what we see is, I actually worked early in my career. I actually worked in New York City. I was on a task force working with the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the FBI. So I was working organized crime cases just like this. Ring activity, that's what I did. That's what we call these, And the ring activity, really, it's the same template. It's the same template, whether it's medical fraud, whether it's workers' comp, staged accident construction, literally, it's the same thing. So here's the difference, working for the government, working for the UN for the last, 10 years or so. This is what I see. There's a humongous shift in what I call fraud that's localized to fraud that's globalized. Okay, so what we see is, back in the day, even when I would run investigations, yes, we had certain rings. They did have ties overseas, but a lot of them really, the ties were, maybe, let's say if you have a string of 100, maybe one or two strings you'd find links to. Now, out of those 200 strings, you probably have 190 that are overseas. They're driven by highly organized transnational groups. I've seen them. I've been involved in cases with them. I just got back from Southeast Asia. I was involved in an extremely disturbing case where they were targeting organizations and they were developing rings right in the United States, and specifically on the East Coast. So what they do, Kristin, is they know the template, right? The rings, whether it's attorneys, doctors, body shops, tow shops, construction companies, they get the MO down. As soon as they get a little pushback, some, regulation, law enforcement gets on their case a little bit, they move to a different template and they target construction. It's the same thing, the same players. They just pull out as soon as they, feel a little bit of, vulnerable, and then they'll replicate. And that's basically how they do it. So it's the same thing over again. It's just like a new flavor, if you will. And they keep, and they use, this is another disturbing thing too. They're using technology now, a significant amount, AI, to try to target people. They'll find certain employees. They'll use certain document fraud now is huge. They can do these things online in milliseconds that used to take, a couple days to do.
What can we do about it?
And that's what's important. So I think it's multi-pronged, right? You need really collaboration, and that's absolutely the key. And I mean that across all industries. We can't have those silos, we call them. So in other words, you have industry collaboration that's needed, but also within these specific types of frauds. So in stage construction fraud, you need collaboration with those construction companies, with the insurance companies, with the regulators, law enforcement, politicians. You need across the board, investigations, investigative reporters, kind of making, the public aware of these type of things. You need that collaboration because if one's trying to take action without the other's support, it's not going to be successful. And what happens is, as soon as we start to go down one path, if you don't have that collaborative front, the criminals, they know this, and they will keep manipulating on that until you show that like full court press. Put your A game in 100%, and that's really the only way it's gonna work.
Yeah, because I think one of the reasons you'd probably agree that fraud is able to keep going on is because we have one side of it that is highly organized. They talk to each other, they plan this stuff, they know what they're doing. And then we've got the side that, of the insurers that up to this point have really not organized themselves and are just now starting to do that. So I'm sure you're encouraging that.
100%. Absolutely. Any type of collaborative environment. I try to sit on as many boards and panels and do, as many media events as we can just to spread the word on that. But a lot of that comes down to, we do have, it comes down to agility too. We need to be agile in our approaches because they are a lot more agile than we are, right? They have a ton of resources that load into this. By the time we are on to a new scheme or if they're focused on a new area or let's say a new area of New York, lower Brooklyn, let's say, where, all of a sudden, there's 20 buildings going up. They're going to focus on that. They know these things, right? By the time we get onto that, they've already filed 100 claims and made a couple $1 million. They're onto something else. So I think the agility where, let's say upon first report to an insurance company, whoever it is, whether it's even just an operational level claim representative, they have a pathway to go to report it to the investigative unit. Investigative unit can get in touch with law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's really going to be the key. And really, it's just awareness, creating that awareness, even amongst fellow employees. This is very important, especially in these types of cases, because I saw a recent statistic about 30% of employees are aware of some sort of fraud that is happening or has happened within their specific company, and they don't do anything about it, right? So you need to have those anonymous tip lines. You need to make sure that those employees know it affects them. It affects their wages, their benefits. It goes on and on and on. So it really is damaging across the board. So I think that's really going to help is creating that internal awareness where, employees, they don't want to quote unquote tell on a fellow employee. They don't want to have that reputation. We get that. But those anonymous tip lines, those certain areas where they can go to has shown significant value. And just showcasing some of those whistleblower laws that are out there that can protect them if they do see something, right? I mean, it's regulated. So, just to showcase that those things are available to them.
Dr. Fraud, let's talk auto fraud, which is rampant. We had that great video that came out from Queens a few months ago, but that's not, everybody was talking about it. But let me tell you, I've seen tons of these videos. I'm glad that one went viral. I'm glad that people see how blatant this is. What is auto fraud? Tell me how it's happening across the country, if you found that. And again, the effect that it has on all of us.
Mm-hmm. So auto fraud, is not new, and it's something where auto fraud can be anything from just staging. Let's say you have a legitimate accident, from exaggerating the damages on that, exaggerating your injuries from that. So you do have legitimate accidents that do happen, and you have that padding and that exaggeration in there. Absolutely, you have that. That's a massive problem. But then you also have just fake accidents outright. And this is a problem. You have, phantom losses. People claim that they were hit and took off, but they caused damage themselves. They back into things. These are all things that are highly, highly damaging. And this is why they can get away with it now more than before, because a lot of insurance companies post-COVID, they were forced to use a lot of these technology platforms because we just couldn't see each other, right? They had to pay claims on FaceTime. I mean, I saw it. I mean, they just had to do this, take care of customers. It's an incredibly competitive market right now. It always is, but especially right now, there's insurance companies popping up all over. Insurance companies want to keep their people. They want to retain them. So they want to make them happy. There's always a trade-off between convenience and security. So what they're doing is there's a trend, what we call no-touch claim payment, where you call in a claim, you say, hey, I just got rear-ended, the person took off. They're going to say, oh, wow, really, there's no chance of fraud here. And it's not even going to see a person or a claim representative. It's going to go right to automation. It's going to say, hey, send us some pictures, FaceTime us, do a video around the car, and then they use technology to do an estimate, automatically send them a check. I mean, this happens so much. So huge vulnerability, right, Kristen? I mean, it's just, and it happens every day.
I thought, I thought that we had hit kind of the worst of this, and now you just made me realize that we have a whole, and we love AI. It's got great things it's going to do for our world, but this is one of the examples where you need to physically look at a claim. This is why, you see insurers fighting back because they are looking at claims. They're not letting it just go. And if you let them just go, then again, we all suffer.
Yep, 100%. Yep. And this is, again, and I've seen, unfortunately, they want to retain so it's a trade-off between customer service. They want to maintain those customers, keep them happy. Oh, I mean, how great is it? Oh my God, a customer had a legitimate claim. They were paid within 2 hours. That's a message they want going out. There's a lot of those that are out there. But, 20%, anywhere from, I would say 5 to 20%, depending on the line of business, have some discrepancy in them. Not necessarily fraudulent. There's something wrong. Someone adds something, someone just exaggerates a little bit. You know why, Kristen? The opportunity is there. I've studied this for 20 years, the psychology of fraud. It's just an opportunity. People think, oh, well, I'm going to steal this pack of gum. No one's going to look. I'm not going to get caught. It's the same thing with fraud. It's just exaggerated in that method. But absolutely, everybody pays for it. Premiums go up, price of auto repairs goes up. If they're homeowner claims, just contractor work goes up. It just trickles all across the board, no doubt.
And and we've certainly seen this in New York. I mean, insurers end up leaving. They just end up saying, there's too much fraud in this state. We're just going to go. Now, I know it's happening in New York. Is this also happening in other states?
Yes, we are seeing this happen in other metropolitan areas. We see it around Chicago, we see it California, and Florida. In certain metropolitan areas around Miami, we see a lot of rings. And right, this activity, it's just right. It's just too expensive, right? I mean, and you have those areas again, New York. I mean, we love our people in New York. We love people coming in and working from around the world. We love it, right? I mean, we employ a ton of people. But that also comes with a massive risk because you have just a vulnerable population. You have a lot of people that might just be coming to New York with their first time jobs, let's say, and they get taken advantage of. They get approached by a runner, saying, "Hey, you're making $10 an hour. Guess what? How about you make $5,000 an hour? Just pretend you're injured." And I mean, this is how this works. And these they just capitalize on these vulnerable individuals. So you have so many opportunities in those metropolitan areas because they're so busy and it's so easy to kind of like hide the fraud, if you will, because there's so many construction projects, so many cars, so many people, so many pedestrians. It's just kind of the law of averages as opposed to a rural area in Wisconsin where you have, 10 people and one police officer. I mean, that's not gonna, it's gonna be a lot harder for the criminals to do it. And that's why.
Are you seeing different types of fraud in different places?
What we see is the major metropolitan areas are always going to be a target. There's no doubt about it. We see, in some of those rural areas I mentioned, you might have more like homeowners fraud. Okay, you still have auto fraud, but you might have a little more homeowners just because, the rural environment. You also have, catastrophe fraud is huge. So areas, outside of those metropolitan areas in Florida, let's say, up the coast, let's say West Palm Beach and all the way up the coast, those areas, you're going to see a lot of catastrophe fraud there. Where you hit, areas where you have hurricanes and tornadoes, in the Midwest, they're going to be susceptible to
What is
those type of situations.
catastrophe fraud? Meaning people say that there was damage, but there really wasn't?
Right, exactly. So right, there's a legitimate hurricane in an area, right? Legitimate. Wipes out towns and cities. It's incredible because it's such. I've been to these disaster areas. I actually worked on the New York State Emergency Operation Command during Superstorm Sandy. So I was like boots on the ground. I worked catastrophes. I've been there. It's a disaster. I mean, you just have houses on top of one another trying to sort this out. People are it's just such a highly stressful environment, and you just want to get people taken care of. So what happens is you have a couple things. You have people that, of course, take advantage of that, right? They're seeing all their neighbors' houses, in shambles, and they're thinking, well, you know what? I'm going to go up at night and take half my roof off and claim it. I mean, you do have this happen. Where the biggest vulnerability, though, is in unscrupulous, unlicensed contractors, and they take advantage of people. They'll come around, they'll say they're working for insurance companies. Hey, we're going to fix your roof. I need a $5,000 deposit. Or, hey, I got materials in the back. I'll give you half price. If you give me a deposit, I'll get more. They never come back. This is a huge issue around those catastrophe areas right during the most vulnerable time of people's lives.
The last one I thought of that we've seen a lot, I'm sure you've seen, is trucking, right? So people driving
Yep.
huge trucks that crash them on purpose.
hmm Yep. Yep. And that's huge too, because we have trucking fraud, you have cargo. You have just precious, precious cargo involved. And that's usually what we see. You could have, and that's where investigation comes into play, because what you might have is you might have cargo that was previously damaged. Let's say it's some sort of food that was spoiled, right? And it was worth no value. They're going to load that in the truck, claim it was damaged. And then, unless they do a forensic analysis on the food or the contents and determine that it was, unedible, inedible prior, they're going to make a claim for all that cargo. I mean, that can add up to massive amounts of money. And trucks are worth a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot different than average Honda sedan. I mean, they're just really expensive. So those numbers drive costs massively as well.
Also, a video I've seen is a truck. I think this was in Georgia. Huge 18 wheeler had the camera on it, right? So the company's obviously aware that there's people out there trying to get in accidents with the truck. And you see, it's the
Oh,
middle of the night. There's no one on the road. The trucker is driving as safely as possible. And out of nowhere, this little car comes up in the right and just T-bones, literally goes right in front
yeah.
of this huge 18 wheeler and crashes into it. And that's believed to be a staged accident on part. I mean, people are putting themselves in
Oh, yeah.
serious danger to
hmm
cash in. And I believe, and I'm sure you believe as well, that the people that are driving that car are most likely people who have been instructed how to do this by someone who knows, i.e., a lawyer or somebody
Correct.
who has kind of put them up to this. Because no one in their right mind, I mean, look, yes, you have to be desperate, and people get there, and I understand that. But the level of desperation that you must be at to put yourself in front of an 18 wheeler and go through that type of accident is incredible.
Yep, absolutely. And Chris, what's important too? The reason why a lot of those tractor trailers are targets is the high limits, because they're assuming that they have these, some of them are have unlimited policies. They're self-insured. So there's no cap. You and I might have $1 million, 2 million, or 500,000, whatever your limit is. But they have unlimited, it could be 1 million. So that's why you'll see like, tractor trailers being targeted. You'll see sometimes really high-end vehicles, because most runners know, fraudsters know, if they're involved in a ring, that they're probably more likely to have limits or have insurance, number one, and have higher limits, right? Especially if it looks like a leased vehicle. I mean, it's a requirement, right? So I mean, these are things that to think about a lot of times when you see these staged accidents. But yeah, to your point, unbelievable, right? I mean, to instruct someone to, and we've seen this, instruct someone to, cut off a tractor trailer. We've seen it all the time with big SUVs as well. And we've seen, unfortunately, where sometimes the claimant actually gets like very seriously, legitimately hurt from these. I had a case really early on. It was almost 20 years ago. The person was paralyzed from the incident. It was supposed to be a quick rear ender, and it wasn't, because the third party came, out of nowhere, unknowing, and the person became paralyzed from it. So, And of course, the runner and the criminal, they severed all ties, so they didn't support the person at all after that, of course. So super damaging, super damaging.
Why do you do this work? Look, you're Dr. Fraud. Why do you do this?
Well, Kristen, probably the same reason why you do it too, right? I mean, it's so purposeful. I mean, we do it. It's funny. Early on in my career, I got burned really early on, within 2 months. So I started off working for an insurance company, and I was actually tricked. Okay, fun fact: I was tricked by a 75-year-old woman who had the nickname Grandma, who brought cookies to the office. I can't make this up. Okay. And I was
Really?
just yep, I was handling routine claims. And she came to the office, thought she was legitimately hurt, handled her claim for a while, made a payout to her because I trusted her. Everyone above me agreed. I got authorization and I made a payment to her for bodily injury and some suffering and some things. And then it was about a week later, I was going out to lunch with a colleague and I was sitting on a light and I'm looking because I remember her car because she had come and gone to the office so many times. I said, geez, that looks like grandma. And he said, yeah, me too. And of course, she, prior to that, she had her neck brace on and all these things on. And I saw her take her neck brace off, reach in the back seat. I'm like, well, this is interesting. So I conducted my own surveillance. We kind of followed her a little bit, gets out of the car, no cane, no walker, no nothing, walking around a store. I got law enforcement involved. Long story short, that really burned me so much because she looked at me in the eye about 100 times, and just was so genuine. And I think that really fueled my passion to try to help vulnerable people, help the public, become more aware. And then that just grew, of course, into international working, at the spearhead of most of this. But I think, it's just so purposeful because it just burns me to see people being taken advantage of, that just don't know. Like you mentioned early on, like the public, like we don't know. My neighbors, I try to educate them, like, guys, we gotta keep doing something here because it's just like I feel like people don't act unless they're affected by it
Right.
and it's like they have so many other things to worry about. I get that, but just having that collaborative front to try to at least make it harder. It just drives me crazy. I see these criminals making millions and trillions. I've been involved in cases and busts, and I see these houses they live in, and it drives me nuts to see what exactly that they do to
And
precipitate
another
that.
point, exactly. And another point, how this is hurting. Insurance companies want to pay legitimate claims. That's what they
Totally.
want to do. Now, if you've got all this fraud going on and your resources,
Yep.
it's like being in a fire department or police department. When all your resources are in one place, you now can't help people that really need the help.
Yep.
And that's another way that this is hurting all of us because the insurers are now trying to deal with all this. It means if we are legitimately hurt and want a quick resolution, which is what the insurance companies want to do, we're now all delayed because of these fraudulent actors. And by the way, if we're talking EMS and police, when you stage an accident and
Oh
you
yeah.
know
Yep.
you aren't
Yep.
hurt, you are taking away from
Yep.
fire and medical from people who may be having heart attacks, children who may have gotten hit by a car. You are taking away from people who really need help. And that's
Hmm.
another thing, as a journalist who has covered every horrible thing that you can imagine.
Hmm.
When I know that resources are being taken away from people who really need it, that really gets me like fired up.
Mhm. Yep, yep, absolutely. Because there are others that are, it's like triage, much, legitimate people, correct. And I mean, and that's like that's a great example of the trickle effect, of fraud is just like, plugging the cogwheel, if you will, just putting more people in the system and even going as far as medical treatment, those people that just continue to treat and treat and treat, they're seeing, yeah, some of them are seeing unscrupulous medical providers. We get that because they're not seeing legitimate people anyway. But there are others that are treating and having surgeries and doing things that are, again, that creates a whole other animal in the health system, about premiums there and costs and the fact that you can only spend 5 minutes with your doctor now because they're so stressed. So that puts a lot of stress on that system as well. So, right, there's all these like little trickle factors that happen, and it's just at its core because of this activity, which we could stop. We definitely could stop this. I mean, we figured out so many other crimes on an international level, and this is just so hard. And I think one of the reasons why too is, talking about collaboration. I've worked international, right? 102 countries and counting. I'm trying to get to I think 190 is total. But working in these countries, I look at the states. Every state is literally operates like a different country. When I was in Germany and had to work on cases with Switzerland, it's like you're like, wow, guys, come on, talk. It's the same thing. You talk New York fraud related to Florida. I mean, it's the same. You have people that are excited and willing to do it, but then you hit these massive hurdles: jurisdiction, extradition, whatever's on the political agenda at the time. I mean, all these things really come into play, right? That we don't think about. So each state that we have, it's just hard to operate within them, and the collaboration sometimes is difficult. Even though you think we'd be all one, united front, it's really hard state by state because we all have different, regulatory requirements and different insurance laws and et cetera that make it really, really hard to make that happen.
Well, right, which is why iFraud comes in. It's so important, trying to bring everybody together, share information, share
Absolutely.
energy, share data, share so we can finally protect our communities and make sure that people aren't being taken advantage of and that we all have the resources that we need. So thank you. Look, Dr. Michael Skiba, thank you so much, Dr. Fraud, for being here.
Of course, my pleasure, Kristen, and keep fighting the good fight, 100%. But
We
great to be here.
will.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.